Okay, so just gonna pause. I'll just plunge in and then. On today's show, I'm going to be talking with Sam Irvin, and he's a man of many talents, wears many hats. Today, we're going to talk about his novel writer hat, because we could actually do a whole mini-series talking about his career as a director, a film historian, the world's best authority on raunchy Hervé village has stories, but he's covered that in depth on other interviews, so we're not going to retread that. So his book is called Orbgasm. It's available on Amazon.com, and let's welcome to the show Sam Irvin.
Hey. Thanks for having me on.
You know, the thing is, we could talk about a million things, and I've really been just anything that's on the internet I've watched so far. And you've done a really good job, because you are, the one thing I should have added is you are a raconteur. You're one of these people that you've not only worked in Hollywood, but you kept your ears open. You forged a lot of friendships with a lot of people that have endured over the years. And unfortunately, you're so respectful. You always say nice things about people, which I respect. Although you do weave in some meaty stuff every now and then, which I like too. We all want the dirt. But no, but the thing I want to talk about today before we get into the book, though, is I think at this stage in our lives, you know, when we kind of go back, we're re-embracing the things that influenced us. And instead of you giving a blow-by-blow, you know, biography of your film career, I'd like to start off just talking about, you know, what inspired you growing up. You know, what were the movies, the TV shows, like when you're just a kid, you know, elementary school, junior high, that you just loved, and that you think maybe some of that has seeped into your career and has seeped into Orbgasm.
Yes. Well, growing up, I was just a monster kid. I loved horror movies. And my dad owned movie theaters, so I was able to go to movies and stay there and see them over and over and hang out in the projection booth and all that kind of stuff. So it was really, I mean, you know, this is back in the days, way before people had video cassettes or home video or anything. So the only way you could see movies would either be to go to the theater or wait for them to show up on one of the three networks or late night TV or something. And so I had a really special kind of situation. Mm-hmm. And I just loved horror movies. They had, I started like when I was like 10 or 11 or 12, I started booking kiddie matinee horror movies at my dad's theater. So I would bring in films that I wanted to see myself, a lot of Hammer films, Vincent Price movies. Those were huge influences on me growing up. Huge. And then they had the Shock Theater package on TV every Saturday afternoon, which was all the Universal classics and everything. So that's how I got introduced to, you know, the James Whale movies, which were a gigantic influence on me. The Bride of Frankenstein is my all-time favorite movie, and it just spoke to me as a kid. And as I got older, I realized that as a gay man, there was so much gay subtext in it. I identified with the creature, who was not the monster. It was Dr. Frankenstein who was the monster. The creature is just this misunderstood freak of nature. That's what I was growing up. I was a misunderstood freak of nature, especially growing up in North Carolina, which was, you know, very conservative, and, you know, you just couldn't be openly gay there and live any kind of life. And so, yeah, it was really, I would say, the Frankenstein stories, all the Frankenstein movies appealed to me for that reason. I just so identified with this misunderstood creature. And then in 1988...
Well, you being able to program this stuff.
Yeah.
Or to tell your dad, hey, Dad, could you order, you know, the horror package for the theater?
Yeah.
Describe to young people who just, flip a DVD into the player. I mean, the mechanics of, oh, could you order that 35 millimeter reel, get it to the theater, clear the rights? I mean, because that was a big deal to actually get a short to play in a theater.
Yeah, no, it was really, it was definitely a lot trickier than it is nowadays. But they would, all the major studios and even the studios and stuff had exchanges in Atlanta or Charlotte, North Carolina, where, all the theaters in those areas would book, movies, and the prints would be sent out from these depots and whatever. And they just had, huge archives of the studio's movies. And, American International had all their Vincent Price movies sitting in a warehouse in Atlanta or Charlotte. And if we wanted to show Pit and the Pendulum and House of Usher and all those, we would book them, and they would show up on the day before or whatever. And then we'd screen it that weekend and then send it back on Monday. And, so it was not, it wasn't, crazy, but it was, it was old school. It was big cans, very heavy canisters of these 35 millimeter reels, and the projectionist would have to reel it all up. But anyway, it was, I would book these kiddie matinees, and then I would design little flyers for the next 2 months calendar of what's coming up, and each Saturday would be another horror movie, and I made sure that it would start in the morning, like maybe 10 or 11 o'clock, so that kids would have time to get home for Shock Theater on Channel 13 at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So you'd be able to see a double bill. You'd be able to watch like a Vincent Price movie at our theater and then rush home and see, Boris Karloff as Frankenstein in the afternoon on TV.
Right. Well, describe the importance of, like, at that young age, seeing this on the big screen.
Oh, wow.
Because even though, you could grow up watching this on TV, what do you think was the magic of being able to see this in a theater?
Well, seeing it on the screen, there's just nothing that compares to it. You're in a dark theater, you're seeing at a young, impressionable age where you really are getting scared. And it just, there's no distractions like you have nowadays when you're sitting in your living room watching a movie. You're on your iPhone, the phone rings, people are walking through, whatever. In a movie theater, you're in the dark, you're just very focused on that. And I just became mesmerized. I remember seeing Black Sabbath, the Mario Bava trilogy, and I was scared to freaking death. I mean, that movie scared the bejesus out of me, and it was partly because I was seeing it in a dark theater, but it was scary as hell. And
then, how old were you during a lot of this?
Well, I was very
age?
young, and my parents didn't care what I saw. They would let me see everything. Thank heavens. I started seeing Vincent Price horror movies. I was born in '56. I probably started seeing them when I was like 5 years old, 6 years old. My older sisters, if they had to babysit me, they'd bring me over to the theater and hang out and, watch movies and play in the lobby. And and so I was seeing stuff at a really young, impressionable age for sure. And seeing a lot of this stuff first run, all those Corman, Vincent Price movies started, Pit and the Pendulum, or House of Usher was the first one, and that was 1960. And, they just were, we would always, and it wasn't always the kiddie matinees. It was a lot of times Dad was, these were booked as first run movies. They'd come play for a week or 2 weeks. And sometimes it would be the Vincent Price one. Sometimes they'd be, the Hammer films. I remember when Warner Brothers was releasing, like, Dracula Has Risen from the Grave and Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed. This was a little bit later in the 60s. Those were first run movies. They weren't on double bills or anything. They were first run. And I, remember sitting through those just in awe. It was so beautiful to see it on the screen. And I remember The Fearless Vampire Killers, which is one of my all-time favorite movies, the Polanski spoof. I mean, it just looks so beautiful on the screen. It was just incredible. And
Hmm.
I kept the huge 3 sheet poster from that movie and put it on my wall over my bed. And I still, to this day, have it framed over my desk. It's been an
Hmm.
inspiration, since 1967 when the movie came out. And
Hmm.
it just those were just incredible seminal influences on me, on everything that I like about movies, and they've affected me as a director and as a writer and as a journalist because I want to go back and write about them and the makings of them and things like that. So it just, it still consumes my obsessions, even today, so many years later.
Good. Oh, one little thing. Could you turn your speakers down just a tiny bit? I think it's only when I talk. I think it's like it's getting a little bit of
All
echo.
right.
And maybe if you bring your speakers closer to you, facing away from the webcam, that helps a little bit. I don't think it's horrible, but I just want to early on if we can catch some of that and nip it.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's not fatal, but you can
How,
still hear
how
me
does
okay?
how does it sound now? I just lowered the volume of the speakers.
Let me talk a little
Okay.
bit. I'm not hearing echo the way I was, so it helped a
Okay,
lot,
good.
which
And
is
are you
good.
still
Okay,
getting any echo?
now,
Because I can bring it down even more if it's helping.
I don't hear any echo now.
Okay, great.
And I think you got it, so that's good. So when I've been watching all your videos online, I always see your cool backdrop, which I think, oh, is this like on a Hollywood movie set? But is this your home
This
behind you?
this is my home. We're sitting in the
Your home looks like one of the mummy movies
yeah.
from the 30s.
I call it a curio shop on acid. I just like a lot of eye
Hmm.
candy and surround myself in crazy stuff. And this is we're just in a little tiny condo. There's nothing elaborate, but we've tried to make it elaborate in the way it's decorated. And we're just in the little dining area off the kitchen that's open, and living room's right over there. And I mean, there's not much to the place, but this is part of the craziness. I also have a
But I
Tarzan
like that. I like
bathroom that's
when,
pretty wild, and
yeah, when you see a YouTube video with a horror fan, and they've got all their videos and DVDs and memorabilia
yeah.
and posters behind them. You're kind of like the sophisticated version of that.
Yeah, I don't really have those walls of of videos and all that kind of stuff. I feel like a lot of other people do that. I wanted to do something a little different.
Do you save the wall of? I could picture you having lots of framed, signed photos with all the actors you've met.
No,
Are you into that?
what's odd is that I don't have anything on the walls of my own career, um, and I'm certainly not very humble when it comes to that. But for whatever reason, I just haven't been drawn to just make it a museum about me because my husband also lives
Hmm.
here and our 2 dogs live here, and it shouldn't be all about me. So, oh, well, maybe it should,
Which is nice.
but I try to.
Now, is he in the biz too?
What's that? Oh, my
Is
husband
he
is a
in the business
hairdresser
too?
and an artist. He actually bleached Ian McKellen's hair for Gods and Monsters, which is a film that I co-executive produced. And but he only did that during pre-production, and then the regular makeup and hair people sort of maintained it. But I could not. I tried to get him into the business, but he does not like the weird hours on movie sets and all that kind of stuff. And it's probably better that because we are a little yin and yang, and it's better that he leads a more normal life and can hold down the forge when I have to go gallivanting away all the time to make movies. So it worked out
So that
pretty
was
well.
a few years back. So nowadays, you would have been there with your smartphone, videotaping him bleaching Ian McKellen's hair and posting this
I
on
know.
YouTube.
I wish that we had pictures and all of that. Nothing. It just kills me. I have one photo of me working on that film, and it's just me standing on the laboratory set that we recreated of Bride of Frankenstein for the flashback scene. And we actually got some of the Kirkpaden electrical equipment that had been used in the original Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein. And Mel Brooks also used it in Young Frankenstein. So just this historic electrical equipment. But I have one kind of blurry picture of me standing there on the set, and that's it. I didn't get a picture of me with Ian. It's just crazy. I'm so glad we have cameras in our phones now.
Well, it's also funny too is now that we do have access to cameras in our phone, I always forget to use them. So when you're doing something cool that you want to record, yeah. I have less now, but more access. Why is that?
It's weird. You gotta get with it, man. Come on.
I think the last thing I have on my phone video is at someone's house, and someone had the idea to do like butt portraits, which isn't as kinky as it sounds, but they took this big poster board, they put a big blob of paint on it, and I guess to be nice, they put some saran wrap over it, and had someone sit on it, and then it made the impression of their butt. They were fully clothed. All I could think of was, come on, Yoko Ono would have had you strip into it, right?
Well, there was.
But for some reason, I got my phone out for that.
There was a scene in Bonfire of the Vanities where this girl gets up on the Xerox machine naked and they do a little photograph there.
Now, have you ever worked a real office job in your life? Have you ever done anything that's not the movie industry?
Oh, it's not the movie industry? No. But I did have a regular 9-to-5 office job at a movie distribution companies, plural, in the 80s. After I finished working as Brian De Palma's assistant on Dress to Kill and The Fury and those things, I made a short film called Double Negative, and I put it all on credit cards, and I suddenly, I have to get a real job to pay all this off. And so I ended up working for United Artists Classics, which back then was run by Tom Bernard and Michael Barker, who have gone on to do Sony Classics and are still, kings of the world to this very day. And then I worked, I was director of advertising there, and then one of the people from that company, her name is Linda Beef, she formed a distribution company called Spectra Film and brought me along as vice president of marketing, and so I went to do that, and our biggest hit was Paul Verhoeven's The Fourth Man, for instance. And so I was working a 9-to-5 kind of job, but it was in the film industry, and I did get to go to film festivals and Sundance and Telluride and the Cannes Film Festival every year and stuff. So it had its great perks, and it was loads of fun. But it also had a lot of hard work that had to be done, And I wore a business suit every day in New York, and that was my corporate days. But my heart wasn't in corporate stuff. I really wanted to direct, and so eventually that got going again, and got my first feature off the ground in 1990 with Guilty as Charged, and then that's all I've been doing since then.
See, I mean, you've directed, 60 films now, you've done producing. Even though you seem very competent, I find it hard to picture you taking orders in an office from a manager.
Well, I'd like to do things a certain way. I guess I am a bit of a control freak. I was lucky, for the most part, at those companies. I got to design the movie posters. That was one of the jobs that I commandeered in a big way. And so I had an artistic outlet, and I loved doing that. And luckily, my bosses loved what I was doing, and I was winning awards, Hollywood Reporter Key Art Awards and things like that. And so that was really great fun. And so I was not only designing the movie posters, but then adapting that as the whole campaign for the film, newspaper ads, and all that kind of stuff. I was very heavily involved
So you got a real basis
in.
in more than one aspect of film.
Yeah,
Because, everyone wants to be a director, maybe a writer,
yeah,
but nobody wants to sell the film.
right.
No one wants to do the hidden jobs, but it sounds like being a distributor is one of the best training so that you later know if you're going to make a sellable film.
Yeah, no, it's very true. And I would also get involved in doing the trailers, which was really fun. We'd have a trailer editor. We'd give them the film and they would work on it and stuff. But then I would go to his editing room and sit with him and tweak and figure out how to distill our marketing stance on how we wanted to sell the film into, a 2.5 minute preview. And that was also great training for my directing career as well. And, so there were great, there were things that were very helpful toward, building into a directing career. But definitely,
isn't one of the things,
and the distribution side,
yeah.
Certainly helped a lot, give me a bit more of a balance.
Isn't one of the things you learn as a distributor, you so quickly make judgments on a film. You see the poster, the artwork, the title, the tagline, and don't you just know instantly whether or not this will have a market?
Yeah. No, there's no question. And you realize, you come to very quickly realize how lucky it is that some films, even make the light of day. When we saw The Fourth Man, the Paul Verhoeven film, at a film festival, I just fell in love with that movie, and I was like, hold on.
Call from Regina.
What? Lovely. Spam call. I just love getting those. Okay. Let me start that over again.
So Fourth Man.
When we I'll just start with that. Let's see. When we first saw The Fourth Man at a film festival, I fell in love with that movie and wanted us to pick it up for distribution. And we did. And then we started to have early press screenings for critics for magazines. You have to do that like 3 months in advance because of the deadlines of magazines and whatnot. And the critics for those magazines were not digging it. And I was like, what is it that they're not understanding? Well, David Anson saw it at another film festival, and in Time magazine, he had a whole sort of column on the festival in general and just wrote a couple lines about the various movies. And he said that one of his favorite films at the festival was The Fourth Man, and it was this wickedly funny thriller. And I realized that the people who were seeing it were taking it too seriously. They weren't understanding that it was a dark, humorous movie. And so I immediately grabbed that quote, a wickedly funny thriller, and I put it on the front of the, just the top of the ad and on the front of the press book, on front of the press materials and everything. And this was being handed out to critics now who are coming to see it at press screenings for the opening of the film, for like newspaper critics and short lead time people. And suddenly everybody loved the freaking thing. And the reviews from then on were absolutely just, all 5-star reviews. I mean, it was just incredible how it turned around the perception of that movie. And it was just those few words that gave permission for people to laugh at the dark humor of it, and then it became our biggest hit. So it's it could be as simple as a little tiny thing like that. Just tweak it, can suddenly make all the difference in the world, and that was really, really interesting to learn. And the title of the film can make a huge difference. Just all sorts of things are hugely important beyond just trying to direct a good movie. There's so many other things that have to fall into place that can make it into a hit. So anyway.
I remember it very vividly when it came out, and it had a good run in Seattle because we had really good art house theaters. But the poster was so striking.
But I just remembered the place that we saw The Fourth Man was at the Seattle Film Festival, and it was Daryl McDonald and Dan Ireland, who were huge Verhoeven fanatics, and they were the ones that really kind of introduced Paul Verhoeven to American distributors and everything else. I mean, it goes back to those two guys who founded and ran the Seattle Film Festival, which was an amazing film festival. Unfortunately,
and you probably saw it.
Passed away now.
You probably saw it at the Egyptian Theater there.
That's exactly where I saw it, at that festival. That's amazing. I totally forgot about the Seattle connection there for a moment. But by the way, I mean, the success of that film introduced Paul Verhoeven to Hollywood, and then he came and had a huge Hollywood career with RoboCop and Basic Instinct and everything else. But without the success of The Fourth Man, I'm not sure that he would have been able to launch that Hollywood career, or certainly not as soon as he did. So
did you get to meet him during all this?
Yeah. He came over for the premiere, and Renee Sutendijk, who was also the lead actress in the movie, came. And Tom Hoffman, who was the very sexy guy in that, who Jeroen Krabbe has the affair with and everything. He came over as well. Jeroen was busy doing another film, so I didn't get to meet him at that time. But they were all fantastic, and Verhoeven was just marvelous. And they were thrilled about the poster that I designed, and that poster won the Hollywood Reporter Key Art Award, and I was so thrilled. And I do have a photograph of me sitting at the premiere with the poster, with Renee Sutendijk sitting there underneath it, and the artist, Vince DePazio, who I had hired to do the actual rendering. And so, that was really, that's one artifact that I luckily have a photograph of. But anyway, it was just a magical kind of project to help it find the right audience.
Before we move on, if we could say one more thing about the poster. First of all, I'm thrilled to learn something new, that you designed this poster, which I love, because I can so vividly remember this back in the 80s. This is 35 years ago. I must have only been about 3 years older. I must have been like 19 or 20 when it came out, something. But I just remember it kind of felt like an old film noir from the 40s. It had the classic femme fatale. It almost felt like it was from another time, which I liked. It had this old Hollywood glamour to it.
Well, the background is all red because I wanted to symbolize the blood and everything that was coming up in the film. And Renee Sutendijk, who in the movie is a hairdresser, is front and center with holding a pair of shears of scissors for hairdressing, and then behind her are the Jeroen Krabbe and Tom Hoffman looking at each other, and she was having an affair with Jeroen Krabbe, but he was really having an affair with the guy. So it was a definite triangle of this sort of bisexual kind of situation. And the scissors, it was so funny. Vince DePazio was who did the illustration. He initially, was giving me his, the schematic and sketch and everything, and he had just regular pair of scissors. And I said, no, she's a hairdresser. You got to have those scissors that have the little pinky curve thing on the end of it. And he was like, I don't know what those look like. Well, my husband, Gary, is a hairdresser, so I, the next day, borrowed a pair from him and brought them in, gave them to Vince so that he could paint an authentic looking, hairdresser scissors. So it's just interesting when I think back on how, oh yeah, Gary, my husband, influenced that one little thing that's in that poster.
So when you irritate your husband, does he ever strike a Renee pose with some scissors? And
Yeah, probably quite often, actually. But we've been together 39 years, so, he hasn't killed me yet. But that's the key word, yet.
No, I love that poster, and to think of some continuity in your career, working on Brian De Palma's Dressed to Kill with another blonde, this with a blade,
Yes.
the switchblade. And what's so interesting about Dressed to Kill, I can picture the one iconic poster that was mostly used, but that movie's had a lot of different posters and artwork and DVD releases and Blu-ray,
Yeah.
and just a lot of artists who weren't connected with the movie, even in the past 5 years, to see artists' renderings and doing their dream poster.
Yes.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, all these sort of
Why does it
Mondo
inspire?
tribute posters
Yeah.
that
Why does it inspire so many artists?
Yeah, the original poster to Dress to Kill was very odd because it just didn't. It was almost like they had just found a piece of artwork that sort of had a couple of suggestive elements that were in the movie, but really it wasn't any scene in the movie or whatever. It had this girl sitting on the side of a tub with her sexy leg, which I guess is supposed to represent Nancy Allen because she later is in a bathroom when she is attacked. But she was never sitting on the side of the tub. And then there's a guy coming through the door, kind of in shadow, but he's definitely a guy. And yet the whole movie is about this woman who's the murderer. And I guess I'm not spoiling too much that it was a cross-dresser. But they didn't have like a woman coming through the door with a razor blade. It's a man. So it really makes no sense, the artwork. Certainly doesn't.
The artwork was a major spoiler, and I know that upsets some people that a lot of the promotion of the movie spoiled. Yeah. By the way, I think the speakers was picking up a little bit of feedback again.
All right.
Maybe if those go down a little tab. Obviously, I'm going to do some editing on this episode.
Before we start up again.
Okay.
I want to, since we're talking about Dress to Kill, okay, we can start up again?
Okay. Oh, and the other thing, too, is it's like this on Skype, too, but Riverside has a really long delay, so if it seems like I'm not talking and then suddenly you hear me talking, and it seems like I'm talking over you, it's just that there's such a long delay after each of us talk.
Okay.
You probably think I'm done talking, and then 4 seconds later, my voice comes in. Just so you know,
Okay.
it's really exaggerated on here, and probably because I have a very low upload speed on my internet because I live in a small town. Anyway,
So
so back to Dress to Kill.
while we're talking about Dress to Kill, I wanted to just promote a magazine that I just wrote on the making of Dress to Kill. I wrote a 13,000-word memoir of everything that I could recall about working on this film as De Palma's assistant. And this magazine, Boobs and Blood, liked it so much they devoted the entire issue to it. So it has 175 photos. My favorite, of course, is the picture of me with Angie Dickinson in the elevator with her all bloody. And this was a Polaroid picture that I got the continuity people to take because they didn't really want publicity photos, giving away that Angie was going to be murdered, sort of like Janet Leigh in the shower scene in Psycho. But, there was no internet or any place for me to release that photo until now. But anyway, it's all profits from this go to a breast cancer charity, and you can get this at mag.com. Anyway, it's a pretty cool magazine, and it was nominated for a Rondo Award this year for Best Article, which I was very proud about that nomination. And so anyway.
Well, I will vouch for the article. I ordered it online. I think like on MagCloud or something.
MagCloud.com. Thank you. Thank you for correcting me.
MagCloud. Nice, so I could read it on my Kindle. And at first I didn't realize what I was getting into. I was loving it and thinking, wow, this is taking up the whole magazine, which I'm glad. It could almost be republished as a book or something, or if you maybe added some interviews with people. I mean, have you thought of expanding this to a full book?
Well, it will eventually be part of my memoir. I'm going to have to write a memoir at some point with all these great stories. And so when I was, originally the editor of the magazine said, please write about Dressed to Kill, maybe 2,000 or 3,000 words. And as I got into it, just more and more memories came back, and I was like, you know what? I might as well just write the whole thing, get it out of my system, and I will use the whole thing in my book, and then I'll submit it to the magazine, and I told the editor, I will cut it down to whatever size you need, but I just want you to read it. Well, he read it and loved it so much, he said, we're going to devote the whole magazine to it and not change a word. So that was kind of unexpected, but it was great. I was really thrilled that they could use the whole thing.
Well, it's a really good nuts and bolts description. And I think, you read so many books about filmmaking, but this is a unique perspective. And, filmmaking, not just low budget, but even Hollywood filmmaking, it's about problem solving.
Yes.
And I think you even mentioned, like, everyone's scheduled, the location follows through, or the cast, shows up at the wrong time.
Yeah.
We better shoot something else first. And I like that perspective, and I can see why later you became a good director, because you learned how to solve problems on the set.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one example is that we were going to shoot this big restaurant scene at Windows on the World at the World Trade Center. And it was toward the end of the film when you kind of think everything is over, and it's Nancy Allen and Keith Gordon sitting at a table at this restaurant talking about the gory details of a sex change operation, and a lady at the neighboring table is overhearing this very gory conversation, and she's kind of turning and looking. And so it's a cute little scene. It's supposed to be sort of the denouement. You think the movie is over, and then suddenly it goes on with some more terrifying stuff. But to get permission to shoot at the World Trade Center was very expensive, lots of hoops to jump through, to get the crew all the way up to the top of the building and all set up and everything. It was a major, major undertaking. But Brian wanted to be able to see out the windows just this incredible vista of Manhattan and of the surrounding areas and everything. So the day comes and we get up there and it's this rainy, overcast day, and all you can see out the windows is just pure white cloud. And that was it. And he was very upset and wanted to postpone the day of shooting, but too much money had been spent, and it was just going to be crazy to try to reschedule it again and come back, and we didn't have anything else that we could have shot that day. And so George Leto, the producer, said, Brian, you just got to shoot. And so he and the director of photography, Ralph Boda, just reconfigured their shots so that everything wouldn't be looking right into a white, what looked like a white sheet hanging out the window, and just aimed the shots a little bit more into the restaurant itself. And but that whole scene could have literally been shot on the same soundstage where we had built a few other, cheap sets.
Yeah.
So that was a big disappointment. However, it was a really funny scene. And the woman that they got to play the woman at the other table, who doesn't even have a line of dialogue, just her reactions are fantastic. She was Mary Davenport, who played Keith Gordon's mom in Home Movies, another De Palma film. And she's, in real life, was the mother of Jennifer Salt, who was in Sisters, and her and Mary Davenport's husband in real life was Waldo Salt, the Oscar-winning screenwriter of Midnight Cowboy and Day of the Locust, everything else. So she's an accomplished actress and, it's kind of Hollywood royalty, but she knew exactly what to do with this little nothing part and turn it into something, really memorable. And so what I learned is that sure, it would have been nice to have all this great scenery, but at the end of the day, it's all about the characters in the scene and is it funny? If it hadn't been funny, then the scene would have been a complete waste, no matter how beautiful the scenery was. So, it was those kinds of lessons that I learned, working with Brian, and you see how it could have been a blessing in disguise in a way to not have the audience distracted with looking at all this great scenery.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's from your end, but I can hear you, but I can't see you.
You can't.
Can you see yourself on Riverside?
Yeah.
It might just be my. Okay, it's probably recording from your end, so shouldn't be a problem.
I mean, I can see the two screens of you and me.
Okay, it's probably just the buffering, so I won't sweat it. So if you see it from your end, it's probably still recording.
I hope.
So, but I'll kind of gauge it from my end.
Okay.
It's.
I mean, Kelly, if for any reason if there's any technical screw ups, I'm happy to do all this again. So no worries.
All right. If it doesn't work, I'll just fly out to LA and do it in person. That'd be the easy fix. It's funny you mentioned Jennifer Salt. I remember that part of the article. Didn't she go on to work with Ryan Murphy?
Yes. Jennifer Salt kind of gave up her acting career and became more of a producer and has worked on a lot of Ryan Murphy's projects, from American Horror Story to different things. The last one I saw her credits on were Ratched, which I absolutely love. And so, yeah, she's still kicking it. And I went when Gods and Monsters came out, I met her for a few minutes at a Golden Globe party. And I looked over and I was like, oh my gosh, that's Jennifer Salt. And she's talking to some woman. I'll go over and introduce myself and tell her that I was Brian De Palma's assistant, and we'll be able to talk about Brian De Palma. So I go over and I'm starting to introduce myself to her, and the woman that she's talking to turns slightly, and it's Margot Kidder. And here is the reunion of the two stars of Sisters. And oh my God, we were laughing and talking about Brian De Palma for a half hour. It was so much fun. And so, I didn't keep in touch with her after that, but it was great fun. And what an amazing thing to run into her with Margot.
Well, the more I learn about your career, I see so many parallels with Ryan Murphy and a similar sensibility, where a love of horror meets homoeroticism, and also really appreciating older actresses, and just wanting to honor, those people we grew up with, or just thinking, hey, why doesn't so-and-so get more work, and then creating a project to give them more work. That kind of seems like your sensibility too.
Yeah, it is my sensibility, and I really connect to that. And you're absolutely right that Ryan, I'm constantly reminded of De Palma when I'm seeing a lot of Ryan Murphy's projects for the reasons that you just stated. And Brian was known for these operatic visual tour de force sequences, and Ryan Murphy, when he embraces that sort of thing, I mean, he's definitely carrying the torch forward. And with that, I just love what he does. And he loves the old style music composers too. He'll be licensing Bernard Herrmann cues from old movies to actually recycle in the shows that he's doing now, which I just think is unbelievably fantastic. And, it's hard. When I'm directing a thriller for Lifetime, they don't want Bernard Herrmann-esque kind of scoring because that's old-fashioned. And so, we have to do a little bit more modern type of scores. And it can be frustrating because I really think audiences love that kind of old school stuff if it's done right. So yeah, I'm a little jealous that Ryan Murphy gets to go whole hog, and he has control over anything he does because he's so powerful now. He can do whatever, and he uses
Well, he's
it
created.
beautifully, I think.
He's created such good parts for Jessica Lange, Kathy Bates.
Yes.
But if you look back on your career, who do you think you've had just the good sense to say, hey, I'm going to cast so-and-so. They've been under the radar for a while. Like, I know you've stayed not just in touch, but good friends with Nancy Allen
Yes.
from Dressed to Kill and Carrie, and actually worked with her and given her, some really good roles. But who are the people that you've, really been proud that you've done that with, and who are some other actors that you think are underutilized that you'd really like to create some roles for?
Wow. I mean, there's just so many. I mean, I loved working with Nancy Allen I did a Showtime thriller called Acting on Impulse that she starred in. And, I had known Nancy since my early days of working with De Palma, and we've just remained friends to this very day. I love Julie Brown, the comic actress for Earth Girls Are Easy and Homecoming Queen's Got a Gun and all of that. And I use her whenever I possibly can. She just enlivens any film. I've worked with, my first feature, it starred Rod Steiger, and he was not getting lead roles in movies very much back in 1990, 91 when we were using him. And it was his first real lead role for him to sink his teeth into in quite some time. And he got amazing reviews, and I thought he did just an amazing job in that movie. And we got along great. I mean, it was my first feature, and here I am with this incredible, legendary, Oscar-winning actor, who could have not put any faith in me, but he saw very quickly on day one that I was organized, and I knew what I wanted and knew what I was doing, and he respected me for that, and trusted me, and was very happy.
The name of that movie was...
What's that?
The name of that movie was Guilty as Charged,
Guilty as Charged.
It co-starred, the model turned actress, Lauren Hutton. And I was so glad because she got to be glamorous, but play the villainous role,
Yes.
and she also had a kind of a flair for comedy.
Yes.
And I don't think a lot of people would have given her a chance to do that.
Yeah, it was a really good role for her, and she was fantastic, and I loved working with her. She needed to be very fashionable. We didn't have a huge budget to get a lot of fancy wardrobe for her, and during prep, she just said, I'll take care of that. And she picks up the phone and she calls Bob Mackey and makes an appointment. She takes me, and we go over to his studio, and he's brought all these racks of clothes out. She strips down completely naked, just totally stark naked, and is standing on the little stage, the little round, platform in front of the mirrors. And he just starts dressing her with different clothes. And within like a half an hour, we have all her wardrobe for the whole movie done for nothing as a favor from Bob Mackey.
Wow.
And it was incredible. It was just incredible. I mean, they were like $10,000 gowns and beaded and everything, just amazing. And it was just because of her connections in the fashion world that allowed that to happen. But I loved Laura.
Sam.
She was fabulous. And also in that film was Heather Graham, who was just starting out. She had done Drugstore Cowboy, where she played the
Junkie?
sort of strung out drug addict that ends up dying, and they put it to the ceiling through the little hatch in the ceiling. And when I had seen that, and she came into audition and just was fantastic. And so we got to work with Heather just before her career really took off with Boogie Nights and everything else. So that was really fun.
Yeah. When you hear about your career and you tell all these stories together, especially a beginning filmmaker or someone, not in the biz, you just make all this stuff seem so effortless. Like, oh, I worked with Lauren Hutton. Oh, she called up Bob Mackey. Oh, we're hanging out with him. Do you think you're just blessed with this, or is there just something about you that you just have this confidence to make all these things happen in your career?
I wish I knew what it was, but I do. I have had some incredibly charmed moments that do seem rather lucky. But honestly, on the other hand, I've never had that kind of breakthrough giant hit movie that, put me up into the A-list directors for major studio movies either. So, I've had a lot of lucky moments and everything, but, you really have to kind of win the lottery to make that leap and be the next, Spielberg or whatever in the big time. I was during a lean period. I was teaching directing courses at USC, the School of Cinematic Arts. Now, USC, the University of Southern California, is considered, the top film, film school in the world, really, and has had some incredible alumni like George Lucas and whatnot. But anyway, one of the kids that I was teaching turned out to be Ryan Coogler, who immediately after getting his graduate degree, like literally a couple months after I finished teaching him, he got his deal to do Fruitvale Station, then he did Creed, then he did Black Panther. And so, yeah, I mean, he totally just had this, meteoric rise in the industry. And of course, it was all because of what I told him. But, but other than that, yeah, I mean, yeah.
Is there a part of you that has that pride of a mentor? Like, have you worked with a lot of beginning filmmakers and nurtured them? Is that part of who you are?
I'm definitely very proud of Ryan, and I'm proud of any of the next generation coming up. It's I don't, as a director, I don't get to mentor people very often or very much. But definitely when I was teaching at USC, it brought out the fatherly instincts in me, that I just was really, really happy to see his success happen. And several of the other students have gone on to do some great work and great things too, which is all very exciting. But Ryan was the standout in terms of, worldwide fame and a movie that grossed over $1 billion. So it's pretty amazing.
Nice. Well, here's a question, and people in Hollywood, there's certain things they talk about and certain things they tiptoe around. And it's always like, okay, I've got a connection with someone, and now they can help me. So what's the protocol?
Yeah.
You're the teacher, you're the one in charge. Suddenly the students, wow, big time. And then suddenly everyone in their past wants to, call them up and say, hey, share the wealth, let me work on your next movie.
Yeah,
and how do you finesse that? Because that's a good example that people's fortunes go up and down, and you're not always in the same space, and you might be here, but tomorrow you might be up here. What's that like? I mean, I know it drives some people crazy because it's hard not to be envious when someone's up here and you're maybe just here.
Yeah, it's tricky, and I'm not the kind of person who, for instance, with Ryan Coogler, I would never in a million years dream of asking him for help or anything. It's like he's got his own path, he's doing his thing, more power to him, and. But I'm sure that everybody who ever knew him in his entire life has tried to get in touch with him, and and I'm sure that there are some people that or have asked him to help in whatever. It's very hard, and I'll have people in my life who have seen my success and will, I get approached a lot to. Oh, why don't we collaborate on this or, whatever. And I've had to learn, it's very hard to say no. politely and whatnot. But I've had to learn how to do that because I can't, I don't have. There's just not enough time in the world to do all the things that everybody else wants you to do with them. And I've become a little more jaded and a little more solitary in my pursuit of things as the years have gone on, partly because of, development hell is called development hell for a reason in this crazy business. And I've had so many passion projects that I tried to get off the ground, so many times teaming up with other people who've tried to get projects off the ground, and more often than not, nothing ends up happening, and you spend years of time, blood, sweat, and tears with drafts and drafts and drafts of scripts and trying to get actors attached, and then they're attached, and then suddenly they become unattached, and you get a little bit of the money, but you don't get all the money, and then those investors evaporate, and it's just like, oh, Lord. So, yeah, I have a lot of disappointment in that area. And I think of it almost as PTSD in a way, where I've just kind of had my fill of too many soul-crushing moments of projects that didn't happen. And so now I pretty much focus on being a director for hire on projects that are already developed, already financed, already ready to go. And they call me up and say, hey, can we start you want to direct this? You want to start pre-production in a week? And I'll jump in. And these are many times a Lifetime thriller or a Hallmark Christmas movie, that sort of thing. And it suits my headspace really well to be able to get hired to direct. And that's what I love doing, is directing. Not hired to go look for money, not hired to work with a writer for 2 years to try to get the script in shape and try to answer all the notes that are coming in from a whole committee of a committee of investors. And, that just doesn't appeal to me at all anymore. And I don't have that youthful drive to just do anything and everything it takes to get something going, because I've just been there and done that. So I just like to get a call, go to the set, direct a movie, and then move on to the next thing. And that's what I love doing. And then in between projects, I can do labor of love writing about movies, like the Dress to Kill article in this magazine, or the novel Orbgasm that we're going to talk about, or other things like that. And I did I just won the Rondo Award this year for doing the audio commentary and the extras on the Blu-ray of Frankenstein: The True Story. And that's something that I'm really proud of. And those are the kinds of solitary labor of love things that I can do where I don't have to answer to a huge committee or, take 1,000 notes and have to, from powers that be. I can just kind of do it the way I want it done and have it come out. And so, yeah, that's where I'm at. But it might be a good segue, actually, to get into Orbgasm, because Orbgasm actually started out as a Showtime movie that was in development there. And I wrote the script. I had just done a movie for them called Out There. It was a UFO comedy. And the same producers and production company and everything were going to do my film. At that time, it was called Orb. And I wrote the script and heavily into development. We were literally weeks away from starting pre-production. And then the regime at Showtime changed. And what happens when that it always happens that when somebody new comes in, they wipe the slate clean, all the stuff in development is tossed out. And so my thing got tossed out, and it just the script went into a drawer. And also, there was an element to it where one of the characters was dying of AIDS, and this was in 1995. Well, a few months after that, the drugs got better and people started managing AIDS and were living, and it became a manageable disease, almost like diabetes or something. So it kind of took the wind out of the sails of the danger of that particular disease, and so I just kind of put it in a drawer. I got busy with other things. Well, flash forward to COVID-19 and the pandemic and the stay-at-home sequestration, and suddenly everybody's, this deadly disease. Everybody's looking for cures again and everything, which was a big part of what my story was in Orb. Mm-hmm. And I just decided, you know what? I'm just going to pull this out. It seems relevant again. I can change the diseases. I didn't want to change it to COVID-19, but I could change it to other, fatal diseases that could be cured, and write it the way that I really wanted to write it, and get it out there by self-publishing. I started my own imprint called Knuckle Sandwich Books, and I've done 2 books now during the pandemic, and I've given all the profits of both books to the World Health Organization COVID-19 Solidarity Response Fund. And so anyway, that's how we can get into talking about the novel. And this is it, by the way. This is the cover, and I also did a children's book parody called Sam's Toilet Paper Caper that's all about, remember a year ago you couldn't get toilet paper anywhere, and there was no reason. It was just this crazy sort of paper shortage. And so this is all about an illustrated little children's book parody of my trials and tribulations trying to find toilet paper. But both are available on Amazon, and as I say, all profits go to COVID-19 Solidarity Response Fund with the World Health Organization. So ta-da, and a very sexy cover.
Excellent, and this is a perfect segue, and I like how you talked about how this had first been developed as a movie, and the thing that struck me when I read it is that it's paced like a movie. It's very fast-moving from the first page. You're in the action. It's very action-oriented, has colorful characters, and that's why I was asking you earlier, what movies and books influence this, besides the, illness in it. The sci-fi elements just reminded me a little bit of almost like a Saturday morning serial and just the fun of a road movie.
Yeah. I put just about everything, including the kitchen sink, in this book. I just wanted all the things that I loved somehow made their way into it. And I even, make sure, my best friends in the industry are Nancy Allen and Julie Brown and Cassandra Peterson, who's Elvira, because I directed her second movie, Elvira's Haunted Hills. And I made sure that they got mentioned in there, so there are little Easter eggs with them. And but of course, The Bride of Frankenstein, is being my favorite film of all time, is integrated in a really unique and fun way, I think. And other things that I just loved. I mean, there's a road movie aspect to this with the 2 main characters, a straight woman and a gay man. So, I was definitely thinking of Thelma and Louise when that was going on, or you might say it's Thelma and Louis, but there are definitely elements of that when they're on the road.
Would you say that Men in Black?
Yes.
It just, thinking of like an ominous government agency in the background as the villain.
Yeah. There's definitely Men in Black in there. There's, oh my gosh, there's everything. Well, the main character, she's an actress who had been in a James Bond movie. Well, I'm a huge James Bond movie fan, and so I just thought, if we're going to have this protagonist who's an actress, let's make her a Bond girl. and that comes into play, and she gets
classic cars
at a certain point. I mean, it just had fun with it.
Car buffs will like this.
Yeah, exactly. It's got a little something for everybody, for sure.
Mm-hmm. So in a nutshell, what's your elevator speech, just in a sentence or two, the plot of Orbgasm?
Yeah, it's really hard to talk about without giving too much away, but it's basically an orb falls into the backyard of this Bond girl and her husband, and she's dying of cancer. And I'm not giving away too much because this happens in the first few pages, but she's suddenly being exposed to the orb. She is cured. And they slowly come to realize that it not only can cure cancer, it can cure frickin' everything. And it's this amazing, miraculous cure-all, but it also has a side effect that it makes everybody really horny. And thus, the novel does get very, very sexy at times. But we're not sure, why there's that, and that becomes more apparent as the plot unfolds later on. But then the government agents, the Men in Black, are trying to confiscate the orb, and she wants to take it to her dad, who is dying of Alzheimer's. And so she sneaks away with the orb, gets her gay best friend to come and help her, and he had a disease that has also been cured by this orb. And the two hit the road like Thelma and Louis, and with the government agents sort of trying to track them down, and they're trying to make it to her dad before they get caught. And so that's kind of, I guess, the best way to sort of set it up. But
so back in the 90s, when you were developing this with Showtime, did you have some actors in mind for these lead roles?
Oh, wow. Now that's a very good question.
Because we even kind of joked around a little bit. If you're doing it today as a movie, do you have like your key cast or your dream cast in mind?
God, that's so hard because, oh man, oh many people.
Because back then in the 90s, when you had worked with, oh God, what was the woman you worked with from Drugstore Cowboy?
Oh goodness, hold on. Hello?
What's her name? Heather Graham.
Heather Graham. Well,
so back then in the 90s, could you have pictured like Heather Graham as the lead woman?
I pictured someone a little bit older. I had worked with Linda Ferrantino, who would have been great in that role. Nancy Allen actually would have been interesting in that role. There would have so many people running around in my mind. I had just worked with Bill Campbell on Out There, the other film that I had done at Showtime, and I would have loved for him to play the gay character, the gay leading character, or maybe the husband of the main woman. There would have been just so many people who would have been fun and interesting in those roles.
Do you think now that it's out as a book, this could attract either a network or a film production company to want to adapt it and make this?
If Ryan Murphy somehow got this book and read it, I think he would love it. As to how that could ever happen, I don't know. Maybe Jennifer Salt will find it, read it, and take it to him. I don't know. Those are my wild fantasies.
Which means that Emma Roberts would have to be the lead woman, and Matt Bomer would be one of the characters.
Yes. Listen, Matt. If Matt Bomer wants to play the gay lead in this, that would be incredible.
Who would play the hunky motel manager?
Oh well, that's got to be Henry Cavill, or but that would require a worldwide search, and I would have to audition personally everyone for that character. So it would take a year to find just the right hunky guy that would fulfill that role perfectly.
Who played the werewolf in True Blood?
Yeah, exactly.
Who's that guy with the beard?
He would be on the list.
What's his name? Right. So, which reminds me, speaking of, because I think you've had a lot of influence maybe on Ryan Murphy and even True Blood, because you directed pretty much all of Dante's Cove,
Yes. Yes, I directed all
right?
3
Did
seasons
that
of
didn't that
Dante's
come
Cove, and
that came out even before True Blood,
yes,
didn't it?
came out before True Blood, came out before Twilight, it came out before, all these things that I think get very, very, very heavily influenced. And it was the first really sexy, supernatural, pure entertainment kind of gay series. Up until then, there was gay series like Queer as Folk, um, Will and Grace, or those types of things. But this was so different. It was, Queer as Folk. It got very involved in a lot of the politics of the LGBTQ community. It always seemed like the storylines were dealing with serious issues and things like that. Our show, no, it was going to be pure entertainment, and the island of Dante's Cove was supposed to be populated by almost all gay men, a few lesbians, and maybe a couple of token straight people. So it was completely flipping the standard and making it just totally matter of fact that you're gay, and kind of unusual that someone would turn out to be straight. And we just had fun with that. It was really Dark Shadows with a gay, a very heavily gay and very sexy slant to it. But it was a soap, a primetime soap. And
Well, you had the lead actress Tracy Scoggins.
yes, well, Tracy, the line that I always love about Tracy is whenever she was interviewed and they would ask her how did she play her character of Grace, who's the lead witch on the island, and she said, "Well, darling, it was a cross between Joan Collins and Barnabas Collins," and that captures exactly what this show was. I mean, it was Dynasty meets Dark Shadows with a lot of gay stuff thrown in.
Tracy would know that because she had worked with Joan on Dynasty and the Colbys. And again, what I liked about this is, and to talk about the bigger picture of what you do with not just Dante's Cove, but horror movies and Lifetime and Hallmark, it's really giving these actresses a chance. Like Tracy, the hot babe in the 80s, on Dynasty.
Yeah.
But then, 10 years later, and Hollywood's not, calling as often, don't you think horror in general is so nice to give these, actresses who still have so many great performances left in them, or on the Hallmark Channel, the Christmas movies, the Lifetime, and you do all 3 of those. So isn't that something that you're really passionate about?
Very, and it's always fun to work with these great legendary people who may not be working as much as they used to and need to be working more than they are, and it is fun. And Tracy was just, oh my God, she loved that character so much, and she just, was on fire on Dante's Cove. It was wonderful.
So at the time, what are your memories of when you sent her the script? And, now it's a given, this was successful, but this was kind of uncharted territory. Yeah. What were her kind of apprehensions, and how did you actually get her to be in this?
I don't think she had apprehensions. I think she just saw that she could sink her teeth into that character, man. I mean, it was a juicy, juicy role. And she knew how to do it. I mean, there was no, I just don't even feel like I needed to direct her at all. She just came in and, was doing a number. She knew that she had to be the fashionista like Joan Collins, and that she was going to be bitchy and chew up the scenery, and she was just so delicious. And her experience, I mean, she'd also played a villainess on Lois and Clark, and she had the chops, man, and she just came in like a cyclone and was couldn't have been more perfect for it. And so I think she recognized right away that this role was meant for her, and just grabbed it.
Well, a lot of genre fans also love her from Demonic Toys
Yes.
for Full Moon.
Yeah.
And I think when these actors kind of let their guard down and say, hey, let me be open to these fun parts. Sure, maybe they're not, A-list Hollywood, network stuff. But in some ways, they're freer to play a wider range than they got to play on the network shows.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And I people want to work. They want to work. And so many times the roles that they would get offered would just be little tiny parts that were very one-dimensional or quick in and out or whatever. You offer someone a big, juicy part in a series. I mean, that's, she jumped at it. I mean, I don't remember her having any apprehension whatsoever. And it was just such a delight to see her in her element, doing her thing, and just stand back and like, whoa, this is so amazing, incredible.
So you work on something like Dante's Cove, very erotically charged, fair amount of nudity. You write this sexy sci-fi Orbgasm. So with all that in your mind, what happens when you walk on the set of a Hallmark Christmas romance and maybe they get a kiss at the very end? Do you ever ask them if you can punch up the romance a little bit?
Yeah. It is quite the extremes, let me tell you. And those Hallmark.
Do you ever go into this time warp? You're directing a Hallmark scene and you forget that you're not on the set of Dante's Cove?
It's hard not to think about it, I tell you. I mean, the Hallmark formula is that they cannot kiss until the last moment. And there's always the moment about 3/4 of the way through the movie where they almost kiss, but then they get interrupted. The little girl walks into the room, or there's some interruption, and it's hilarious because that's happened in. I mean, I've done 7 or 8 Christmas movies now, and it's happened in most of them, and that's just the formula that they like. So anyway, we all have fun on the set, kind of joking about it, and okay, here's the almost kiss scene. Okay, now we get finally the kiss scene, but also
so give a rundown.
Out of order, and many times. I've done it where literally the kiss, the final shot of the movie, might be the very first thing we shoot, and the actor and actress have literally just met 5 minutes before we roll camera. So
give a rundown. Who are the actresses you've directed on Hallmark Christmas movies, and just what's the joy of us getting just to see them back into TV?
Yeah, well, my favorite is Maureen McCormick from the Brady Bunch, Marsha. And I've directed her twice now in 2 different Christmas movies. And she's just so much fun, and I think a really, really good actress, and played completely different roles in the 2 that I did. One, she was kind of like a Mrs. Claus who ran a kind of an amusement park called Christmas Land, and she's dressed in the red and white kind of Santa-looking outfits and stuff, and just has that kind of ethereal, Mrs. Claus sort of thing going on. In the other movie, she plays the mom of the main character, the girl in that film, and she has some really wonderful moments where she gets emotional and has to cry and all this stuff that's totally different than anything we've ever seen, that I had ever seen Maureen do. Certainly, between the Brady Bunch and some of the comedies and things that are a little lighter. This was a much heavier, very dead-on serious role, and she just was magnificent. And the whole time I was thinking, my God, why has she not had a career like Sally Field or something, who started, with Gidget and The Flying Nun, but then became, this Oscar-winning, incredible dramatic actress. And I feel like Maureen has that in her and just hasn't had the opportunities to, break out of the stereotype, I guess, that she carries with her from being on the Brady Bunch. But it just, again, shows you, the trickiness of this industry, how so much is luck and timing and everything else. And it just, it didn't happen for her the way that it did with Sally Field, but not for lack of talent, And so I was thrilled that we were able to give her a spotlight to showcase some of that side of her talent that she doesn't always get to do.
Yeah. And now she has a new life. They did the redecorating the Brady Bunch house, and I think that's spun off. She's doing like a home decorating show now.
She has a whole new career with that. Well, guess what? For 12 years, I lived in Studio City, directly across the street from the Brady Bunch house. And it's so bizarre, the coincidence of all that. And so it was wild to see them, redecorating and refurbishing that home that I used to see every day. And it was pretty wild, pretty crazy.
Isn't that another thing? Hollywood's a small town.
Yeah. Yeah, there's,
don't you bump into people a lot more than, average people would realize, and there's just so much interconnection, and someone who knows someone.
Yeah, it does happen quite a bit, and it is pretty amazing how incestuous the town is, and just how, all these amazing kind of coincidences happen. But yeah, that was pretty wild. So I definitely have had this strain of Brady Bunch sort of bubbling around me.
What's the weirdest, most unexpected celebrity bumping you've had?
Okay.
With someone you didn't already know, like, where people wouldn't even just, believe that you bumped into some star somewhere.
Well, you probably have heard this story before, but okay. I was a huge Vincent Price fan as a kid, and I wrote him fan letters. I was a super fan. And he would go on these lecture tours around America, and I would, even though I lived in Asheville, North Carolina, I could get my mom to drive me to Atlanta, Georgia, or Charlotte, North Carolina, or different places where I saw his lectures and would hang out backstage afterwards to get his autograph and talk to him. And he had kind of gotten to know me a little bit as this, this kid that keeps showing up. And so for graduation, high school graduation, I bamboozled my parents to send me to London. And I, at that time, was editing and publishing a fanzine on horror films called Bizarre. And I wanted to go to London to interview people in the horror film world, especially Hammer Films, Christopher Lee, and those kinds of people for the magazine. And on that first trip, I did get to have lunch with Christopher Lee. He gave me at Pinewood Studios, where he happened to be filming The Man with the Golden Gun, and he gave me a tour of the set. I got to watch them shoot the rest of the afternoon, and then got a limo ride back to London with Christopher and Hervé Villachez, and that's its own story for another time. The most hilarious story ever. But I really wanted to interview Diana Rigg, I was a fan of hers from the Avengers TV series, where she played Emma Peel. She had been in the Bond movie On Her Majesty's Secret Service, but she had played Vincent Price's daughter in Theater of Blood. And I was so loved that movie. It's still one of my favorite movies of all time. And her agent wasn't really cooperating, and so she was on stage in the West End starring in Pygmalion as Eliza Doolittle. So I decided I'd love to see that, but it was sold out. But I figured if I go, there's always somebody selling a ticket out front, and that's what happened. And the ticket was a great ticket. It was down center orchestra, maybe 5 rows back, and I'm waiting for the show to begin. And I figure, afterwards I'll go backstage and see if I can get her autograph or stand at the stage door, whatever. We'll see what happens. So I sit down in my seat, waiting for the show to start, and then I hear this very familiar laugh behind me. And I go, oh my God. I turn around and it's Vincent Price. And before I can open my mouth, he says, Sam, what are you doing here? And he's sitting and he introduces me to his new wife, Coral Brown, whom he met while shooting Theater of Blood. She plays one of the critics that he kills. And it turns out that Diana Rigg was the one who introduced them in the first place. And so I told Vincent that I really wanted to interview Diana for my magazine, and he knew about my magazine and had been in it before, and and he said, well, you're coming backstage with us afterwards. So he takes me backstage when the thing is done and introduces me to Diana Rigg, and we all have champagne, and she agrees to do the interview. She wants me to come back on another day when she's doing a matinee and an evening performance so we can talk in between. But running into Vincent Price by total coincidence at that particular theater when I'm trying to meet Diana Rigg, who introduced him to his wife, and I wanted to interview her because she had played his daughter. It's just the chances of that happening, I'm sorry, there was something that made that happen. And I'm not a spiritual guy at all. I'm an atheist, but there's just no way that happened on its own. I mean, something was going on. Some sort of karma was happening, and it just was crazy. I pinch myself to this day. But the strangest thing about Vincent Price is that it's not the only time I ran into him. I ran into him in New York one time. My parents had come up visit. They stayed at the Wyndham Hotel. I went to pick them up because we're going to go out to dinner, and we're coming down the elevator at the Wyndham Hotel. The elevator's door opens on another floor, and in walks Vincent Price and Coral Brown. And again, he's like, Sam, what are you doing here? And all of us ended up going out for drinks before we went to dinner. And, it's like, I just don't know how these things happen. I seem to be much more lucky when I was younger. And my luck has kind of run out now, but back then, just the most crazy things would happen. And that was certainly one of them. Vincent Price, there was something mystical about Vincent Price in my life. And I got the job to direct Elvira's Haunted Hills, which was a spoof of the Vincent Price Edgar Allan Poe movies, because I had memorized a Vincent Price monologue when I was in school. And when Cassandra Peterson had me come in to interview for directing that movie, she said, here's the script, Elvira's Haunted Hills. It's a spoof of the Vincent Price, Corman, Edgar Allan Poe movies. Are you familiar with those? I was like, am I familiar? Here's the monologue of Vincent Price at the climax of Pit and the Pendulum. Do you know where you are, Bartolome? You are about to enter hell, the neverworld, the infernal region, the abode of the damned, the place of torment, Gehenna, Naraka, the pit, and the pendulum, the razor edge of destiny, is surrounded by the waiting pit of hell, which must destroy him finally. Blah. And she cocks her head and looks at me like I'm absolutely insane and says, you're hired. So that's, I just feel like my life has been sprinkled with Vincent Price fairy dust. Because it just there was just something about the guy that somehow, I don't know, I love him so much, and it's just been, he's been such a great influence on my career and everything else. And there's other stuff that I didn't even tell you. I mean, I developed a project that I wanted to direct with him that almost happened, one of those passion projects that didn't happen, but met with him many times, and just such a lovely man. Such a lovely man.
Nowhere near as divinely influenced as yours. The closest I can come, I was in North Hollywood 2 years ago at this small event, and after the fact, somebody told me that Susan Olsen, who played Cindy Brady,
Yeah.
had been in the venue because I guess her son worked there and was dropping something off. So nowhere near yours. I can say I came this close to meeting Cindy Brady, but the fate was not on my side that night.
Damn it.
So I guess you have the knack. You have the knack. Well, we're going to wrap up in a little bit. Obviously, we could talk for about 2 weeks straight. Hopefully, we'll talk some more. So I know you're busy, I'm busy, but before we go into this final stretch, I still have a few things to ask. We have to tell people, again, you're such a good promoter. Just be very explicit. Where can people buy Orgasm, learn more about you online, and just immerse themselves into the world of Sam Irvin?
Well, look me up on Facebook. I'm pretty heavy into Facebook. I'm on Instagram, but I don't like Instagram because I can't be long-winded in my posts. You're sort of you're unlimited text you could put in the Facebook posting. So check me out there. Orgasm is available on Amazon. However, because it's an erotic book, their regular search, you will not find it. You have to go to the book section, or you can, put in the regular search Orgasm, Sam Irvin. Nothing will come up, but then you can have an option for filter, and just bring that down. And when it says category, just put books, and then it's the very first thing that pops up. It's very annoying. Kids, I don't know who they're trying to protect from, because kids can search the book section just like anything else. But okay, whatever. But if you go to my Facebook page, you'll also find links that can just get you directly there, and you won't have to go through all those machinations. I go to conventions. I'm going to one in June, Wonderfest, and I be a guest there and have a table where I sell some of my merch and sign autographs and connect with fans. I love going to those because we can gossip and just get to meet everybody, and it's so much fun. And I haven't been able to go to one because of COVID for over a year now. So this is going to be really fun to go back there. And Wonderfest is also where they have the Rondo Award ceremony, so I'll be able to pick up the hardware for having one for the Frankenstein: The True Story disc, which you can also get on Amazon. You can also order it from Shout Factory, who put it out. You can get it directly on their website. And my little children's book parody, that's also on Amazon, and that's easy to find because it's a children's book. You can put that in the regular search, Sam's Toilet Paper Caper. And you know what? I'll mention this. I did not direct the first Elvira movie, but it's Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. But I only did her second one. But they have a new Steel book DVD that just came out this week, and it's absolutely beautiful. And I did the introduction in the booklet. They have this huge booklet in here, and did the whole forward here. You can see me with her on the red carpet. And I also, you can see here, we did an audio commentary that I produced with Cassandra and Edie McClurg, who plays Chastity Pariah, and John Paragon, who was the co-writer, but he also gets blown up at the gas station scene. But anyway, it's a lot of fun, and you can hear that audio commentary on here. And now, my own film, Elvira's Haunted Hills, we are hoping, because this is the 20th anniversary, that's going to get a Blu-ray release later this year, or knock on wood.
I hope it does. I've seen it. You really did capture a lot of atmosphere. I love the sets, and like you said, you're going for a Poe, the Roger Corman Poe movies of that era. So that'd be cool to see on a really sharp Blu-ray.
Yeah, no, I'm really hoping that will happen, and it's probably the favorite film that I've ever done. It just was so much fun and so funny to work with Cassandra, and it also starred Richard O'Brien, who played the Vincent Price character. And for those who don't know, Richard was Riff Raff in Rocky Horror Picture Show, but he is Rocky Horror Picture Show. He wrote the play, he wrote the songs, the lyrics, and the music, and he wrote the screenplay when they did it for the movie, and he played Riff Raff on stage in London in the original cast, and Riff Raff in the movie. I mean, he is Mr. Rocky Horror, and he's just the most hilarious guy, so talented, and he knew everything about the Vincent Price movies we were spoofing, and was just the perfect guy to come in and play that character.
He's kind of like you in that, you preserve Hollywood history, but also when you meet someone like that, I bet you really talk their ear off and want to learn what we haven't read yet. And I think that's so important, to someone who wants to preserve the history, is to get new info and to get it from the people while they're still alive. Because I heard you talking about the book you did on Kay Thompson.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, totally.
Very well researched, 200 interviews, but you never got to meet her while she was still alive. That's why it's fun talking about you. You have a lot of life left in you, but just for me, having seen a lot of your work, it's so much more to ask you directly.
Yeah. Yeah, the Kay Thompson book, which I just happen to have a copy here.
Which you just happen to have.
This is totally off of the horror beaten path by a long shot. But my older sisters, they introduced me to the Eloise children's books about the little girl who lives in the Plaza Hotel. And then I grew up and saw the movie Funny Face, and there's this woman in Funny Face who plays the fashion magazine editor, and she opens the movie with Think Pink, and she blows through that movie like a cyclone and practically steals it out from under Audrey Hepburn and Fred Astaire, which is no small feat. And I'm like, who the hell is this woman, and why haven't I seen her in more movies? And oh my God, she's the author of the Eloise children's books. Holy crap. And the more I learned about her, I just could not believe that more people didn't know about her. She was Liza Minnelli's godmother and guided Liza's entire career. She discovered Andy Williams and guided his entire career, and also had a 15-year affair with him. She was the wind beneath the wings of Frank Sinatra and Lena Horne and Judy Garland, and I mean, just the most incredible woman. And she needed a book written about her, and that's what I did. And it came out about 10 years ago now, but it was published by Simon & Schuster, major publishing deal. It was just an incredible experience. And it led also to me being a historical consultant on Liza Minnelli's Broadway show called Liza's at the Palace, where Liza recreated Kay Thompson's nightclub act. And so I worked on that as a historical consultant, and it ended up winning the Tony Award for Best Theatrical Event. So it was again a pretty amazing ride. And I'm still, riding that wave, 10 years later. People are still discovering the book and discovering about Kay, and and who knows, maybe, something will come of that book. There's been little blips of interest here and there to, do some kind of stage show or a movie or miniseries or who knows what will happen. And, we keep crossing our fingers. So, but yeah, that's a whole nother sideline that's completely independent of my horror movie career. Just like the Christmas movies or, whatever. It's just another sideline.
Are there any other people like that you're afraid their story won't be told? Like, is there another bio in you that you want to do?
Well, I was really lucky with that one because no one had ever written about her, and I kind of like uncharted turf. I don't want to write the 17th biography of Judy Garland or something. It's just have no interest in that. When I wrote about, one of my favorite Frankenstein films of all time, besides Bride of Frankenstein, is Frankenstein: The True Story, that I did the Blu-ray extras for. But I did a whole magazine devoted to the making of it. It was Little Shop of Horrors magazine number 38, and I actually won the Bronto Award for Best Article of the Year for this about 3 years ago. But in researching all of that, there was, I had always felt that the film had a lot of gay subtext and a lot of gay influence that had not really been recognized. And the script was written by the most iconic gay couple of all time, Christopher Isherwood and Don Bacardi. And it was produced by a gay producer, Hans Stromberg Jr., who discovered Vampira and cast, Yvonne DiCarlo as Lily Munster and just had this amazing career. Um, and the more I studied about him, I thought, wow, he is maybe the subject of my next bio. But it's really what I'm going to do now is expand all of my studies of Frankenstein, the True Story, into a book that will incorporate a lot of the biographical stuff about the producer, Hunt Stromberg Jr., who's just a really, really fascinating guy. They were all trying to sneak in as much gay subtext into this movie that they could possibly do. And he called themselves the Lavender Hill Mob. And so it's a pretty amazing story. And I've made it sort of my crusade to claim this film rightfully for its LGBTQ roots. And so, that's definitely been on my radar and studying up on this guy. And luckily, all of his papers were donated when he passed away to the Cinematic Arts Library at USC. So I have already gone through every single paper of 25 boxes of his life work. And so I have a lot of research already done on that. And, but I think people want to buy a book about Frankenstein, the True Story, but it'll include a pretty good biography on Stromberg.
It seems like that thread also runs through Gods and Monsters, because
Yeah.
I know, wasn't there a landmark book written about James Whale, but a lot of his biography seemed kind of suppressed through a lot of his lifetime. And it seems like with Gods and Monsters, you got to preserve a lot of his hidden, story.
Yeah, he was as openly gay as one could be in Hollywood in his day. And we're talking about James Whale, who directed Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, The Invisible Man, The Old Dark House, and was played by Ian McKellen in Gods and Monsters. And obviously the movie Gods and Monsters, it was actually based on a novel called Father of Frankenstein by Christopher Graham, and it fictionalized. It took the real life later years of his retirement, where he became an artist, and imagined and fictionalized those final days leading up to. And a little bit of a spoiler, but it's what happened in real life, where he basically committed suicide in a swimming pool in his backyard. And so I read that novel and I was just blown away. It was just so fascinating to me. And I got in touch with Chris Bram and said, is there any way, I don't have any money, would you let me have an option to try to get this set up? And he says, well, I would have, but a guy named Bill Condon just beat you to it a couple weeks ago. And and I had met, here's the quite crazy coincidences and incestuousness of the business. I had met Bill Condon at Nancy Allen's house at a couple of her parties because he was involved in some of her other films. And so I called up Nancy and got his number, and I called Bill, congratulated him on getting the rights to the book. And I said, if there's anything I can do to help you get it going, have you thought of Ian McKellen to play Whale? And he goes, oh my God, we are totally on the same wavelength. I just sent a copy of the book to Ian McKellen to see if he would respond to it. And so flash forward a year, I was working on a film that I had written and was directing for Region Entertainment called Kiss of a Stranger. It was a thriller with Mariel Hemingway and Diane Cannon. And the head of the company, I heard him in the hall mention the title of that book, Father of Frankenstein. And I jumped up out of my desk and I'm like, what? And he goes, well, this guy, Bill Condon, has submitted a script that he's written and adapted from the book, and they have Ian McKellen attached, and we're deciding whether we want to be a production company on this. And I'm like, you have to be a production company on this. And I just badgered them until they said, so they went forward with it. They might have gone forward without my badgering, I don't know, but it certainly didn't hurt. And I insisted on working on it as a co-executive producer. And so that all just happened, in sort of a charmed way as well. And but it was just so cool to be involved in a project that would really present James Whale for real, as the gay man that he was, show flashbacks of him being a director on the set of Bride of Frankenstein and everything. And it was just all very exciting. And ironically, I wasn't even going to promote this, but the perfect segue. One of the things about James Whale that has always been a bit of a mystery is his service in World War One. And an author named Bruce Crellin has just written a book where he found all of the war records of James Whale and makes a case that James Whale, that his service in World War One and seeing all the atrocities of World War One influenced his horror films that he made in the 30s for Universal. And there's this brand new book called The Great War and the Golden Age of Hollywood Horror, where he very heavily talks about James Whale and that influence, but also other horror directors from that time who also served in World War One and he feels were also influenced by this. And look who wrote the foreword. I wrote the foreword to this book, which I'm very, very proud of. And but anyway, this is the book that we needed when we were making Gods and Monsters, because it had all of the information about his service during World War One. And we did have flashbacks in the movie of him fighting in World War One. In fact, we even designed the sets of that to kind of be an homage to a war film that James Whale had directed back in those days. And so anyway, it's just it was working on Gods and Monsters was one of the great things that one of the highlights of my career for sure, just for all these incredible reasons. But his Whale story had not been fully told in those biographies that had come out before, and it just keeps being more fully told, as evidenced with this brand new book that literally just came out like a couple weeks ago. So we're finding out more information about him, and that's a good thing.
Well, this is kind of a scoop then.
Yeah.
It's hot off the press. Okay,
press.
One more question, but before we do that, the thing I love about all the other interviews I've seen with you is you have a signature Sam Irvin wardrobe and look to you. So it's got camouflage and leopard print and jungle print and what would you describe the Sam Irvin style? And peacock, because just you being in the clothing a peacock is present.
Well, what I'm wearing today, Dolly, is it's got the jungle motifs with the tigers and everything. But if you look at my sleeve, there's peacock going on, and yes, I have embraced my fashionista side and my old age, and yeah, I just get the biggest kick out of it. I love doing it, and so even when I go to appearances at these conventions, it's I'll have a different ensemble every day, and I'll make a little video to put on Facebook. So today I'm wearing Ralph Lauren, and who knows what I'm going to wear the next day. It's all for tongue-in-cheek fun, and I get a kick out of it. It's my form of drag. So
back in the day, you must have ordered a lot from the International Mail Catalog.
Yeah. I would have liked to have ordered some of those models. I was an avid reader of the International Mail Catalog for sure.
Well, it's nothing like you have, but in honor of the interview, I tried to find something approaching. The closest I could find was this tie with these kind of neon-colored tropical fish.
Nice! That's very cool.
What do you think?
That is very cool.
Would it get past the Sam Irvin?
Absolutely passes the test.
Okay.
But
Cool.
The other reason that
By the way,
I
I don't
wear
think I've
flashy
worn
clothes is because otherwise, I would just blend into the background.
But it's inspiring because, I don't think I really, worried about getting dressed up since like high school. When going to the teen discos where we probably would have worn that back in like the early 80s,
Yeah.
which was fun. But it's fun to dress up though.
I love it. And I mean, I don't want to get too serious, but there was a period of time when I sort of let myself go and was a lot heavier. And about 3 years ago, I lost 70 pounds. I had to, someone said, with you, all your clothes are going to be too big. What are you going to do with them? And I was like, well, I had like 3 or 4 sets, the medium heavy, the heavy, and there's like, you should get rid of it all. It's too much of a temptation to allow yourself to gain that weight back if you think you have the wardrobe waiting. So I took that advice, and it was the best advice I'd ever done. I got rid of every single stitch of clothing that I owned and started to build my wardrobe with clothes that I loved, clothes that fit me, fit my new body shape, and I'd always been drawn to really flashy clothes, but didn't feel comfortable in it when I was in my bigger self. And so I kind of have come out. I've sort of channeled the peacock in me, and really dressing the way that I have always wanted to. So it's just been a fun ride. And I've kept the weight off so far, knock on wood. And now that I've got this great wardrobe, I'd be terrified to put on weight because I wouldn't fit in it anymore. So it's an incentive.
Is this the male version of when I'm an old woman, I shall wear purple and a red hat?
Yeah, for sure.
So instead of the Red Hat Society, you would be like the Peacock Shirt Society.
Yes. And, I have a car that's fire engine red, I just like color. I want color in my life. And, I'm embracing that side. And I hadn't fully embraced it in my younger days. I was always being a little cautious, a little too safe, trying to blend in kind of thing. And, it's the era of RuPaul's Drag Race, and, everybody's sort of expressing themselves. So I'm expressing myself. Wait, this is the inner me coming out.
So I think your next divine intervention will be you'll be at a stoplight in Hollywood, look over, and you'll see Angeline next to you in her sports car.
I am so in competition with her. Ooh.
By the way, they're making that mini-series with her. You should have been on this series.
I would have loved to. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be really interesting to see.
Okay, final question. And it kind of goes back to what you were, I think, talking about. You picked filmmaking to do. That's a collaborative effort. Yeah. Sometimes you got the energy, sometimes you don't. When you don't, you found a way to write a book and to still express yourself creatively. And I know there's so many people out there, who take inspiration from that. They want to be a screenwriter or write a novel or meet cool people at a horror convention. So what's some general advice you can give to fans, creative people, that whether they've got, a lot of people to work with or no one to work with, at every stage of their life, and maybe it's just going to the store and buying the cool shirt they always wanted to wear, and never had the guts to. What's your advice to people that want a creative outlet, but they're kind of afraid of what other people will think?
Yeah. You've got to embrace yourself. You can't be afraid of what other people think. I have so learned that over the years. I don't care what anybody thinks. And if somebody doesn't like some of my writing or some of my movies, whatever, I don't care. I mean, what what piece of art is universally loved by every single person on the planet? There is none. So you just can't worry about that. You gotta do your own thing. And for people who are just trying to break into this crazy business, it's so competitive and so difficult. Try to bite off sizable pieces that you can chew. It's like don't try to write, Black Panther 4 and be sending the script to the Marvel people, thinking that they're going to pay attention to you. Take that story that you were going to do, change the characters to characters that you own, and write it as a book and put it, self-publish it on Amazon. Do you know how much it cost me to self-publish on Amazon? $0. It's free, people. You've got to use that, and then you have a calling card that you can now send out a published book or whatever, and it's that's something that everybody can do. My husband, is always saying, "Oh, I want to write this as a script." I'm like, "You're a really good writer. You need to write it as a book." And if somebody then reads it as a book and decides this will make a great movie, then maybe you can make the deal where you could write the script to it. But it's really, really hard to break into the business, without doing things that you can control yourself. And this is, this self-publishing thing is something that you can totally control. And so I encourage people to, do things like that, and where you can be your own boss, do it the way you want, and express yourself.
Now, the book Orgasm, or Orbgasm, ORB, Orbgasm, ends with sort of a cliffhanger. Did you mean to tease people for a sequel?
Well, we'll see. Let's see how people react to this and how well it sells. And if I get inspired to want to continue the story, there's definitely things in my head of how to keep it going. Who knows? We'll see.
Who knows? I almost forgot this. Oh my god. If I had forgotten this is the closest I could find to an orb in my home. It's not a crystal ball.
Oh my goodness.
Isn't that cute? Isn't that great? It's actually, I think it's Polish glass.
Wow.
And it's a bud vase. You put water and a little bud in it. Isn't that cool?
That is really cool. I love that. Yes,
If this was Orbgasm, it would be... Who knows how it would be affecting my body, but...
Well, hopefully it will cure... It'll be a cure-all for everything, or at least make you horny.
There you go. Which kill two birds with one stone. Okay, so to bring us out of this, I'll put you on the spot. I want you to recite a few lines of Vincent Price's big scene from The Pit and the Pendulum.
Oh my God! Again. Okay, here goes. All right. Do you know where you are, Bartolome? You are about to enter hell. Hell, the netherworld, the infernal region, the abode of the damned, a place of torment. Gehenna, Naraka, the pit, and the pendulum, the razor edge of destiny. Thus the condition of man, bound on an island from which he can never or hope to escape, surrounded by the waiting pit of hell, which must destroy him finally.